Hey, what's happening DC Guy 01 viewers, it is me, the DC Guy 01, and welcome to my review and retrospective of the 2004 The Batman TV series. I've been wanting to make a video like this for a while now, and this felt like the perfect time to do it, as I recently binge-watched the entire series for the first time, in addition to the 20th anniversary of the show's premiere happening this year. So let's jump right in. The Batman ran from 2004 to 2008, and stars Rino Romano as a young and still learning Batman who's only 3 years into his tenure as the Caped Crusader. When a new breed of criminals begins emerging in Gotham City, the mythical Batman, still believed to be nothing more than an urban legend, must emerge from the shadows to protect the city from a large cast of supervillains. Personally, I have a very odd relationship with this series, as I simultaneously grew up with the show while also not having watched that much of it. As a kid, I owned a DVD that contained the first 3 episodes of the series, a DVD that I watched no less than 20 times. I also had several toys from the series, including several Batmans, the Batmobile, and the Batbike, which included a sidecar riding Robin. I also had the Batman themed I Spy book that I would look through almost every night. But I never actually saw any other episodes of the series outside of those first 3 episodes, as the show had already come off the air and there were no channels that I had or knew of that were playing episodes. This meant that the majority of what I knew about the show came from the pictures and captions in the I Spy book and the toys. So when I actually got around to watching the series this past summer, it was a surreal experience of experiencing it for the first time while also having a good amount of pre-existing knowledge about the show. The series itself holds historical significance, as it was the first Batman television series in over a decade to exist outside of the Bruce Timm universe. In 1992, Batman, the animated series, aired its first episode and became the catalyst for a series of interconnected animated television shows and movies produced by Bruce Timm. These series include Batman, the animated series, Superman, the animated series, Batman Beyond, Justice League, and Justice League Unlimited. These series and their depictions of the characters are often considered by fans to be the definitive representations of these characters, with roles such as Kevin Conroy's Batman, Mark Hamill's Joker, and Clancy Brown's Lex Luthor, along with many others, being seen as the definitive portrayals of these characters. This created a unique challenge for the creators of the Batman TV series, who had to find a way to differentiate their show from the ones that came before it, that fans had come to love, while also maintaining the fan base that those shows had accumulated. When it came to setting itself apart, I think it succeeded. The Batman has a very different look and feel from the Bruce Timm shows that came before it, which is made obvious through the designs and animation style. While the Bruce Timm shows were no stranger to exaggerating physical features to fit their aesthetic, nothing compares to the exaggerated designs of the characters in the Batman. The Bruce Timm characters often had very blocky structures. Meanwhile, character designs in the Batman were very jagged with lots of sharp angles. I actually really like the designs of a lot of the characters, especially Batman, and I love how almost comically long his cape is, and how it completely wraps around him whenever he stands still. In addition to their physical appearances, the characters' movements were also very different from what fans had seen before. In the Bruce Timm shows, most of the characters move like real people, with a few exceptions, with characters like Batman being more acrobatic and fluid in his movements. In the Batman, all the characters are professional martial artists, and move with the agility and athleticism of a professional gymnast on a trampoline. While it is a little odd to see a character like the Penguin performing flips and Liu Kang kicks, it makes for entertaining fight scenes and makes Batman look even more skilled when he defeats opponents who truly know how to fight. In terms of feel, the Batman probably compares to Batman Beyond more than any other Batman show, with a very stylized and sometimes darker world. This is something that I think is best conveyed through the intro. The series would eventually go through a massive tone shift in Season 3, with the introduction of Batgirl. Once again, I think the shift in tone is best conveyed through the intro. When you change the theme song to a remix of the '66 Batman theme, you know you are taking on a more lighthearted tone, and the stories from this point on reflected that. This was kind of a shame, because I personally feel that one of the unexpected strengths of the show was its ability to do drama. In episode 3, Batman is pushed to his physical and psychological limits as he squares off with Bane. In addition to watching Batman nearly give in and break under the pressure, but push through to save the day, we also get what I think is the most emotionally impactful scene of the entire series. While Batman is being put under to be operated on by Alfred, that sentence in itself shows how real this show could get. We get a flashback of the night Batman's parents were killed. Instead of showing the moment of Bruce standing over his parents' bodies, which is the standard visual for these types of scenes, it shows Bruce sitting alone in the police station, where Alfred is brought to him by Jim Gordon, leading to young Bruce breaking down in tears.
Someone's here for you, son.
This scene and the context that it's used in does an excellent job of showing the importance of Alfred as a support system for Batman, which is an aspect of his character that I think is often overlooked.
But I promise you, I will never, ever leave your side.
And while the series took on a lighter tone as it progressed, they were still able to pull off great emotional moments. In A Matter of Family, the first episode of Season 4, they introduced Robin. And if you know Robin's backstory, you know that it's not something you would typically show in a children's television show. I remember when I first watched that episode, I wasn't sure how they were going to handle it, and part of me wondered if they would gloss over it and leave it implied. So I was pleasantly surprised when not only did they show the death of Robin's parents, but they were very explicit with it. The shot of Dick Grayson watching his parents fall to their death was incredibly powerful, and something that I think the show needed to show that they could handle the sometimes very dark subject matter that these characters have to offer. This episode also gave us a great performance by Mark Hamill as Tony Zuko, and Hamill's only appearance in the series. Another strength of the show was its ability to make the characters its own without them feeling out of character. A lot of that is thanks to the actors, and it's really a who's who of voice actors that appear in this show, including Tom Kenny, Ron Perlman, Patrick Warburton, and many others. They all do a great job of putting their own unique spin on the characters, while also staying true to the personalities and mannerisms that have been established in previous performances and iterations. In some instances, fundamentals about a character will be completely changed, which sometimes works, but other times doesn't. My favorite character alteration was how they reimagined Harley Quinn. One of the biggest problems I've always had with Harley Quinn is how a trained psychiatrist so easily fell for Joker's manipulation and mind games. In this show, they turned Harleen into a ditzy dropout who has unknowingly made a career out of ruining people's lives through bad advice that she feels she is qualified to give because of her psychology degree that she got online. Not only does this make her being manipulated by Joker make more sense, but it's also just a funny concept. Comedy is another underrated strength of the show, which in part came from how the characters were reimagined, allowing for characters who tend to be more serious to have great comedic moments.
Oh, are you here for some... You knew she was a plant, right?
There's a great episode in Season 3 titled A Dark Night to Remember, where Bruce Wayne suffers a head injury and forgets that he's Batman. He then attends a party being attended by Commissioner and Barbara Gordon. Barbara immediately puts together that Bruce is Batman and begins teasing Bruce with how she knows his secret, to which Bruce has no idea what she's talking about. After having to save the day herself, because Bruce Wayne is useless at fighting supervillains, Barbara is in disbelief that she ever even thought that Bruce Wayne could be Batman, and even mentions to a now recovered Batman how cowardly Bruce is. The whole plot of this episode is very reminiscent of an episode from Batman the Animated Series called The Forgotten, where Batman suffers a head injury and forgets who he is. However, that episode played it for drama, while the Batman played it mostly for comedy, which is unfortunately a reoccurring pattern for the show. The comedy in the show goes beyond slapstick and comedic dialogue. It's often as simple as inside jokes. One of my favorite episodes of the series is Artifacts from Season 4. In this episode, Mr. Freeze reemerges in Gotham after being frozen for over 1,000 years. With no Batman to stop him, a group of archaeologists discover the remains of the Batcave in search of answers of how Batman defeated Mr. Freeze the last time, which itself takes place about 20 years after the show. There are so many great inside jokes and references in this episode that Batman fans will immediately pick up on. From Batman and the Batmobile being redesigned to resemble their appearances in The Dark Knight Returns, to Robin having moved on and taking on the persona of Nightwing. There's also a great moment of comedic dramatic irony when the archaeologists discover that the Batcave is under what used to be Wayne Manor, leading them to reach the conclusion that Batman was Thomas Wayne, Batgirl, who they know as Batwoman, was Martha Wayne, and that Robin, who they know as the Red Robin, which is a reference in itself, was Bruce Wayne, as Robin would have been around the same age that Bruce was in the picture they find of the Wayne family. They also find an old wheelchair that they assume was used by Alfred, only for the flashback to reveal that it was used by Batgirl, who has taken the role of Oracle. I remember when I first saw that episode and that reveal was made, I was actually shocked that they decided to go that direction with Batgirl, implying that the events of the Killing Joke happen in this universe. Little references like that are sprinkled throughout the entire series. Even something as simple as Adam West playing the mayor is a little Easter egg that fans will enjoy.
Joker has to be kidding if he thinks he can get past Gotham PD.
While the show has many great elements to it, it also has its flaws. Personally, I feel that the show's greatest weakness is wasted potential. On repeated occasions, the show presents a scenario that has the potential to deliver incredibly emotional and profound stories and episodes, and more times than not, the writers don't capitalize on the opportunity and instead go the generic route you see in most children's superhero shows, a route that we know the show can break away from with great success. See the A Matter of Family episode. The example that stands out to me the most is how the show handled the character of Ethan Bennett. Ethan Bennett is a detective who works for the Gotham City Police Department and is tasked with bringing Batman into custody. He is also Bruce Wayne's best friend. For the entirety of Season 1, Bennett goes back and forth in an internal struggle between morals and duty. As a member of the GCPD, Bennett is obligated to take down Batman and is constantly pressured by his partner, Detective Ellen Yin, and Chief Angel Rojas to fulfill his duty. But Bennett struggles to do this, as he believes Batman is doing more good than harm, and having him out free is benefiting the city. This continues throughout the duration of the season, and is actually handled very well, until the season finale. In the rubber face of comedy, the Joker kidnaps Ethan and tortures him with a toxic, rubber-like substance. After being saved by Batman, Ethan's personality becomes more aggressive, and that night, he transforms into the monstrous Clayface. In Part 2, Ethan, now as Clayface, is out for revenge and begins hunting down the Joker on a mission to deliver what he believes to be true justice. The story itself is an homage to the Killing Joke graphic novel, with Joker torturing one of Batman's closest allies to prove the point that it only takes one bad day to send even the most righteous person down an evil path. The main story of the Killing Joke is playing with the idea of how one bad day can shape the rest of a person's life, and how it can manifest differently depending on the person. They even have Clayface as Joker drop the one bad day line in the episode, and as a whole, the episode does a good job at portraying this idea. The problem that I have with these episodes is not with Ethan Bennett. In fact, I actually think this is fitting with Ethan's internal struggle with the effectiveness of the justice system versus vigilante justice. My problem is with Batman's reaction to having to take down his best friend. Simply put, he just seems too okay with it. Even after finding out Clayface is Ethan, Batman doesn't let up on hunting him down, and seemingly has no problem with fighting his best friend. Not only does this feel out of character for Batman, who is still young and yet to be jaded to situations like this due to his experiences, but it's also a missed opportunity on the part of the writers to show the emotional hardships of being Batman. I was expecting to get a scene where we see Batman struggling with the idea of having to bring down his best friend, and potentially the guilt of feeling responsible for Bennett becoming what he is. Similar to the dream sequence from Batman the Animated Series showing Batman's guilt for Harvey Dent becoming Two-Face. They would actually do a scene like this in Season 2, where Batman sees Ellen Yin's spirit asking him why he couldn't save her, and it was very effective. So the writers showed they could have pulled this off. Instead, Batman seemingly forgets that he has a past with Ethan as soon as he puts on the mask, and treats him like any other supervillain. This feels like it should be a character-changing moment for Batman and change the way he approaches crime fighting. And while this episode would become significant for Batman's approach to fighting crime, it had nothing to do with Ethan. This would get repeated in the season premiere of Season 3, in the episodes that introduce Batgirl. In Batgirl Begins, Barbara Gordon explores the city with her classmate, Pamela Isley. The two spend their time sabotaging and confronting the heads of corporations whose factories are destroying the environment. After Pamela transforms into Poison Ivy, Barbara takes on the identity of Batgirl and helps Batman take down Ivy. Once again, having no problem taking down her best and only friend, and even seemingly enjoying doing it. Both of these instances could have been used to deliver powerful emotional scenes showing the characters dealing with the hardships of being superheroes, and neither one took the opportunity. Another issue that I have with the show is how it handled specific characters. The most notable example is how the show completely forgot about fan favorite Detective Ellen Yin. As mentioned before, Detective Yin was introduced as Detective Bennett's partner. And like Bennett, Yin believed that Batman was a force for good in Gotham. But unlike Bennett, Yin was more willing to put her responsibility to bring Batman in ahead of her personal feelings towards him. This would all change in the Season 1 finale when Yin decides not to take Batman into custody or even unmask him after he is taken out by Clayface. This led to a season-long partnership where Yin becomes the Commissioner Gordon and Robin equivalent of the series, acting as Batman's informant, filling him in on GCPD intel, and helping Batman take down several supervillains. The character of Ellen Yin was already an enjoyable character, so it was great to see her get a more prominent role. Yin had great chemistry with both Batman and Bruce Wayne, and it was amusing to see how different the relationships were, despite it being with the same person. It also served as a turning point for Batman, who for the first time is letting someone in and having someone to lean on for support other than Alfred. Unfortunately, it didn't last long. I remember while I was in the process of watching Season 2, I came across a meme that poked fun at how quickly the show forgot about Detective Yin as soon as Batgirl and Commissioner Gordon were added to the cast. I didn't realize how true that meme was at the time, but literally as soon as Season 2 ended, so did Ellen Yin's story. She would never appear in another episode and would only be referenced one time, in appearance only, in the rest of the series. Many of the villains also felt really underutilized. Despite being the main villain in what I still feel to be one of the strongest episodes of the series, Bane would never get another episode as the main villain, only making cameo appearances in 3 other episodes throughout the rest of the series, and in only one of them does he get a line of dialogue. Penguin ends up becoming the Porky Pig of the series, the comic relief character who gets caught in the middle of everyone else's schemes, but is never the focus of the story. There are actually more instances where Penguin serves as a side villain than the main villain of the episode, even in episodes where he's set up to be the main antagonist, like the Team Penguin episode. Despite being highlighted in the intro of the show, and being one of the most famous Batman characters, Catwoman would only appear in 4 episodes throughout the entire series, and would always be paired up with another villain that would end up becoming the primary antagonist of the episode. This is even more odd considering lesser-known villains like Scarface, Firefly, and Man-Bat all got their own solo episodes, and in the case of Scarface and Firefly, getting multiple episodes where they're the primary villain. This also meant that several notable Batman villains like Two-Face, Ra's al Ghul, the Mad Hatter, and Scarecrow never made appearances in the series, while the Joker got a grand total of 14 episodes where he was one of, if not the, main villain of the episode. And while I enjoyed some of the changes the show made to characters, there were a few changes that just didn't work for me. Like I said before, Poison Ivy was friends with Batgirl, and it's made clear that they're about the same age, that being young high schoolers. So it was a weird decision to make Ivy that age, but then still keep her as the exotic seductress that the character has been established as. As mentioned before, the show would go through a massive tone shift starting with Season 3, and like the 66 show, there was an increase in the use of one-off characters, with characters like Joker, Riddler, and Mr. Freeze being used less frequently. The show would shift tones again in Season 5 with the introduction of the Justice League. The show basically stopped being about Batman and more about the Justice League as a whole, with Batman being nothing more than the connective tissue. Thankfully that hasn't happened in any other Batman series since. And while this led to the show distancing itself from that darker tone it started out with, it was still enjoyable. The dynamic between Batman and the other Justice League members allowed for very entertaining episodes and even some great dramatic moments, most notably the climax of Vertigo, the first episode where Batman teams up with Green Arrow. This shift also led to another one of my favorite scenes from the series, when Batman is first brought up to the Watchtower and introduced to the Justice League for the first time in the finale of Season 4. Batman turns around and reveals that not only did he already know about them, but that he's already taken control over the Watchtower. It's just such a great character moment and very fitting for Batman. A lot of the one-off villain episodes were surprisingly strong, with the episode Seconds having not only a complex and sympathetic antagonist, but a surprising emotional gut punch of an ending. I won't say exactly what happens, but I will say this. Not many children's cartoons have the guts to kill off kids. The Batman had its strengths and weaknesses, but I believe that its strengths greatly outweigh its weaknesses. It stayed true to the characters and the world while still making them its own thing. It succeeded in creating its own identity and the ability to stand out on its own in a sea of Batman shows. And when stepping back and looking at the series, most of the complaints stem from wanting to see more of the characters and more of their stories. And when a television show can get you coming back because you're invested in the characters and want to see what happens to them next, it's done something right. Whether or not it succeeded in providing a payoff for that audience investment is another story. Is it the best Batman show? Once again, that's a whole other discussion. It should be noted, however, that whenever people discuss the greatness of Batman the Animated Series, a point that always gets brought up is the fact that it's an Emmy-winning series, which it did indeed win 4 Emmys. So what does it say about the Batman that it won 6 Emmys and was nominated for an additional 8? If it's not the best, it's certainly comparable, and probably a lot closer than people give it credit for.